Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the point-in-time survey for this year, which will be conducted on Thursday, January 24th. We have a couple of changes on the survey that you will probably notice from last year, but still we just want to go through it so we're all on the same page and we all kind of know or at least have a general idea of what needs to be collected and how it needs to be collected. And we'll just start at the top and we'll go to the bottom, and we will try and keep this short and simple. And we're also going to keep a recording of this webinar on our website, and it'll be under the Balance of State tab on the THN website. So first up is the person conducting the survey. So not the person who is giving the answers, but the person who is actually conducting the survey. So if I were sitting down with a homeless individual, I would put my name in this blank spot right here. And go ahead and put the city where you're conducting the survey, and then if you're conducting the survey at a particular facility, go ahead and write that in here, or if you have a street address, put that in, or just an approximate address is fine. We just kind of want to know where in the city the survey is being conducted. Now, the next important thing is this right here. An individual does not wish to take the survey or the situation is too dangerous. Now, this is going to happen, and that's okay. Not everyone is going to want to take the survey, or you might find that you or your volunteers might be in kind of a sketchy situation, and you know what? Don't worry about it. You can just mark that box and move on. However, if you are able to get a couple of questions, we would really like that, and it's good for reporting purposes. So, and these questions are right here: question 2, question 3, question 6, and question 7. Now, these are marked with the asterisks here, so please be sure that your volunteer knows to look for those, and that's how they are set apart from the other questions. So, let's move on to question 1, date of birth or age. Now, some people, and this is fine, don't really feel comfortable giving someone their complete date of birth. So maybe they just want to give you the month and the year, and that's fine. And you can also just ask for their age. Either one is fine. Just make sure that we at least have a year down, or we at least have an age. So one or the other. If you want to be ambitious and do both, that's great. But in the, thinking about time and stuff, just do one or the other. Question number 2, this one's pretty obvious. The individual's gender. Question number 3. Now this is a multiple answer. You can have multiple responses in this one. So you mark down all that apply to this individual, and you let them tell you. So it's probably not a good idea, unless it's completely obvious, to just make assumptions on an individual's race. Moving on to 4, does the person consider themselves to be Hispanic or Latino? Yes or no? That one's pretty easy. And number 5. So this is kind of describing your family or your household. So a person is either single, they can be a single unaccompanied minor, so maybe somebody who is 16 years old, 17 years old, or 2 parents with children, 1 parent with children, a household with only children. So this could be, maybe a brother and a sister who are 15 and 16, or it could be a 17-year-old mom and a child, or a 17-year-old dad and a child. And then you have a couple without children, or any other type of family. So you have a lot of choices here, and we ask that you only check one of those. Moving on to question 6. Now, this is a question regarding how many individuals are in the household, how many adults, how many children. So the first part you want to answer is right here. Including yourself, how many total people are in your household who will be staying with you tonight? So, if this person is a single individual, this is just going to be a number 1. But if there are 2 people in the family, Obviously, that's going to be 2. So how many of them are adults? They're going to be able to answer that for you. Go ahead and get an age and the gender of those adults, and then if any of the children are 18 or younger, go ahead and get all of the age and gender of those children as well. Moving on to question 7. This is going to be about where this individual stayed the night of January 23rd. So when you're conducting these surveys on the 24th, just say last night. So this is where we have a lot of, well, I'll say that we have to go back and correct a lot of this when we're doing the data entry. So you have a lot of options here. We have everything from emergency shelter, transitional shelter, mental health facilities, hotel motels, corrections facility. Maybe they stayed in their own home or apartment. You know, maybe this person isn't homeless yet, but they are in danger of becoming homeless. So you have a lot of these. Now let's talk about a place not meant for habitation. So we have a couple of examples here: street, park, car, tent city, etc. So any place that is not meant for habitation, that's what you want to check. So if somebody says that they're staying in the old abandoned building on 4th Street, that's not a place meant for habitation, so you want to go ahead and check that. So it really does you know, mean any place that's not meant for habitation. We want that checked. Right underneath it, we have sharing housing of other persons due to loss of housing, you know, economic hardship. So that means, hey, I stayed with my mom last night, or I stayed with my brother, I stayed with my best friend. Go ahead and mark that. What we don't want you to do is mark other and then say, you know, stayed with a friend. Well, no, because you would mark this. So be sure and have your volunteers get familiar with this, because if they're marking other and then when they write other in and it's actually something that we already have up here, it takes time away from the folks who are doing the data entry. And so we just want to be you know, really cautious with time and making sure that we're using it wisely and we get these reports back out to communities in a timely fashion. So again, just ask your volunteers to kind of get familiar with the different options that are here, and you know, and if they want to ask a couple of other questions to clarify, that's fine too. You know, we definitely encourage that. So let's go to questions 8 and 9. So these are questions involving minors and children. So if you are a minor, or the children with you are minors, we want to know whether or not they're enrolled in school. So that's a pretty straightforward. It's either yes or no. And if they are enrolled in school, we want to know if someone assisted the adults with the paperwork. And then we also want to know what the resources are that the children in the home need. And you can mark all of those, you can mark one of them, or you don't have to mark any of them. But this really only applies if there are children present, and that means the unaccompanied minor or the family with, you know, 2 younger kids. So 8 and 9 apply to families with children. So all of question 10 is regarding military service. So the first one is obvious. Have you served in the U.S. Armed Forces? Yes or no? So if you select no for your person, then go ahead and skip down to number 11. You don't need to answer anything else because it all has to do with armed forces. But if the individual did serve in the military, then we want to know the number of years that individual was in the military, whether or not they are a member of the National Guard or a reservist. And then we also want to know what tours of duty. Did this person serve in Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan? So those are the major conflicts that we've been involved in for the last 50, 60 years. And last, and this is a pretty important one, do you receive VA benefits? And we often find that the folks who have served in the military, sometimes they don't even know if they're eligible for benefits. So we definitely want to get that filled out. Number 11, how long have you been homeless? Now, obviously, it's going to be hard to get down to days if somebody's been homeless for a number of years, but, you could have somebody who's only been homeless for 2 weeks, and, you can put that down, so 14 days, or maybe 6 months, or, in some cases, you're going to have people who've been homeless for a number of years, so just get the most accurate number as possible on that. Number 12, so this one, we want to know their current situation, not what has happened in the past, but currently. So this is my first time homeless, or I've had 2 or 3 separate periods of homelessness. And then we also want to get not currently homeless. This is really important, and this is a change from last year because some people weren't answering all of these questions because they didn't think that they applied to them because they weren't technically homeless. They still had a roof over their head. So, go ahead and mark that if somebody isn't currently homeless. But with that, we also want to know how many times they've moved within the last 60 days. So be sure and answer that. And then moving on, we have whether or not the person you're surveying has been homeless another time in the last year, the city they were living in the most recent time they became homeless, and whether or not they were born in the city or the county where they are currently living. Number 16 deals with the reasons why an individual became homeless, and again, here you can check all that applies. So it might be because they were unable to pay the rent or the mortgage, and it might also be because of domestic violence. So be sure and mark any that apply, or mark the other and write that in. Again, kind of like the where did you spend last night, again, just be careful with the other. So if you write other, well, I have a problem with alcohol, well, we have that covered right here in addiction. So just be sure and look over the options here. Okay. Number 17 is asking about shelter and housing, whether someone needs a particular type of housing and whether or not someone is receiving a particular type of housing. So we have emergency, transitional, affordable housing, and permanent supportive housing, and then sometimes no services needed here. So just mark the appropriate box. For education, we're only going to check one here. So you see all of your options. Some people are going to have a master's degree or higher, and some people are going to have never attended school, and that's fine. So just be sure and check only one of these. These next ones are pretty straightforward. Are you able to work? Yes or no. And again, if a person answers no right here, you can go ahead, skip the next couple of questions, and just go on to number 22. But number 20, this is pretty straightforward again. Their job status, how many hours a week do they work for pay, and on average, what is your monthly income? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone is working. This could be benefits, so you just go ahead and write whatever money they have coming into their pocket, put it here. We want to know how long an individual has been unemployed for question 23, and moving to 24. This is, have you ever or are you receiving treatment or services for any of the following conditions? And you can check all that apply here. Number 25, this deals with particular types of institutions, as we say, and whether or not an individual has been in this particular institution, and importantly, whether or not they were homeless before entering, and when they were released, whether or not they had a place to stay. So you can look here, drug or alcohol abuse facility. Okay, well, we can mark that and say, yes, I was in this particular institution, and I can say, no, I wasn't homeless before I entered, but when I was released, yes, I did have a place to stay. Or maybe someone was in jail and they weren't homeless when they entered the institution, but when they were released, they didn't have a place to stay. So this is pretty straightforward. Just be sure and make sure your volunteers are asking whether or not they were homeless before entering the institution and whether or not they had a place to stay when they were released. Going over to question 26, in the past year, has the person you are interviewing needed any of the following medical care, or health care really. We've got medical care, dental care, mental health, or substance abuse treatment. So whether or not they needed medical care, yes or no, and obviously if they needed it, we want to know whether or not they received it, and then we want to know where they received it from. And I think, as we all know, the majority of this will be everyone's receiving, not everyone, a lot of people are receiving their care from the emergency room. Same goes for dental care, mental health care, and then substance abuse treatment. We just want to know whether or not an individual needed it, and if they did need it, whether or not they received it, and if they received it, where did that care come from? All right, our last question, question 27. We want to know the following services that the individual needs, and again, you can check all that apply. Job training, maybe child care or food stamps, veteran benefits, transportation assistance, you're probably going to see that one a lot. English as a second language, basic needs, and then occasionally you're going to see and come across some people who say, no, I don't need any services. So that is a quick overview of the 2013 Point in Time survey. Again, just be aware that this is okay. If somebody doesn't want to take the survey or your volunteer feels that they're in a dangerous situation, go ahead and mark that box. And if possible, answer these questions, which it might just be possible to get number 2 and 3, but just answer as many as you can. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can always call Eric Samuels. His number is on the survey, and my name is Lindsay Marsh, and my phone number is area code 512-354-2033. Again, that's 512-354-2033. All right, thanks so much, and happy counting.